How's it going? Hey. So this is my first talk ever, so, don't expect too much, all right? All right, so before I even start, I want to say thank you to all the people that have made it out here tonight, all the encouraging messages I've received over the last few months, and the people that have traveled from afar to make sure they were here to hear this. Special thanks to the security community all around the country, but especially the community right here in the Research Triangle. The amount of encouragement and camaraderie is like no other that I've ever experienced. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be standing up here, and it's truly where I found my home and family, so thank you all. A couple years ago, I was sitting down at my first Capture the Flag event. Yes, you were. All I had was a laptop with Kali Linux installed. Sitting next to me was Peter Hewitt. I don't know if he's here today, but if you don't know him, you really should. If you see me at an event and Pete's around, I'll be happy to introduce you. Anyway, at the CTF, I was so excited to be there, but also had no clue what I was getting myself into. Pete suggested I come up with a Twitter handle because all the cool kids were doing it. Well, I figured I would eventually get to that soon, but I needed to go ahead and register for the CTF so that I could hop on to the learners section and follow along. As I was registering, I filled out the usual information: team name, team password, email address. After I registered the team, I needed to log into the site to play. So here I was, so excited to play that when I went to log in, I totally had forgotten the password that I just created 30 seconds ago. Well, lucky for me, there was a password reset option, so I clicked that and entered my email address. And after I hit submit, the next page loaded. Wait, that wasn't supposed to happen. What I saw was a full page of code, and within that code, my little noobish brain understood exactly what happened. Jackpot. I'm at a CTF. The server running the whole thing was left in verbose debugging mode, and I just got the admin username and password in clear text right on the screen in front of me. Hell, I didn't even have to check my email. That was so easy, even an effing noob could do it. The F-noob, that was me. Before I get too deep into my talk, I want to preface by saying these are all my own opinions, not those of my employer or any other group that I may be involved with. I also mention resources in here, but it doesn't mean that I'm endorsing them, their product, or their services. I'm just simply stating they may be an option for you. One of the best talks I've ever seen was by Brian Austin at B-Sides Charleston in 2017, and it was geared towards newbies in security. And at the time, I was really, really green. Everything to me was really exciting, and I was essentially lost, not sure where to start, what resources were available, or how to even break into security. I just knew that I really, really wanted to work in security. From that talk, I gained a list of valuable resources that ultimately helped me learn, gain experience, network, and finally break into security professionally. In 2011, I was given the great opportunity to launch into IT with the Department of Defense. I became the lead IT support for the headquarters of Fort Polk and the Prince Server administrator for the whole installation. I started out with no formal training, only a passion for technology and for learning. I'm now a security engineer and subject matter expert in many different areas within IT. I have several IT and security certifications and also a degree, and all of those were achieved while working full-time, oftentimes in very demanding roles. Some of the information today will be general advice based on my own experience, what I did and how I got into security. But I also have a website that my wonderful partner has helped me build. And while the site is only in its infancy, I hope to build it with something much greater while also keeping it simple and easy to use. The idea here is to share information about the best resources available in order to help build up and bring more people into our community by giving them a starting point. So you're interested in security, but you aren't sure where to start. Or maybe you've been in security for a while, but you're looking for something new. If possible, I'd suggest to narrow it down. What is it that you like to do? That was really hard for me, and it still is hard for me. I want to learn it all. If you aren't sure what to do or sure what you like, start off by crossing things off that you don't like. Ultimately, life's too short to spend majority of it doing something that you aren't interested in or something that's not going to lead you to doing something that you do like. So pick something that you like and then pursue it. Some questions that you can ask yourself can narrow down what you like. Are you interested in planning and designing? Consider architect or engineering roles. Or are you more interested in investigating and analyzing? Consider incident response or analyst roles. As you navigate through the security galaxy, it is important to stay focused on your ultimate goal. There will be a lot of distracting things that will be so interesting, but may send you down a rabbit hole in some other direction that takes you away from achieving your goal. I'm still a noob, which means everything is still bright and shiny and exciting to me, and truly this field is a breeding ground for the curious, and I'm curious. For instance, last year, I may have turned off the fire display in the middle of the lobby of that other conference because I may have been curious on what that switch that was not protected in any way and just out there in the open would do. I may have exploited an open vulnerability because I may have been able to. And while I wouldn't suggest exploiting vulnerabilities unless you have the legal authorization to do so, it's the curiosity to look for unlocked doors that can really help you succeed in security. Another member in the community pulled me aside later to mention that I fit right in just because of that. And I'm not condoning any illegal activity here, just pointing out that part of our job as security professionals is to find those unlocked doors, to figure out where they go, to see if there are any other new areas that you can get to from that point, and then to also yell at IT for not locking them to begin with. After you've figured out what you're interested in, what are the next steps? My first suggestion is to get as much training as you can in the very thing that you want to do. There are resources for every job in security. There are videos, courses, books, blogs, and Twitter feeds full of rants regarding whatever subject you're interested in. You can search YouTube, conference talks, check out SANS, Cybrary, CBT Nuggets. Some offer free access to training. Others are paid by training or subscriptions to their whole platform. I personally have been lucky to win some training through conferences I've attended or even through shared accounts with friends. I very much understand what it's like to be strapped for cash, and everywhere you look for security training seems to cost thousands of dollars. And to me, that's just a bit unattainable for those that are just starting. But luckily, there are some free solutions. There's also a nice community of people always offering hands-on training, but I will get to that in the networking and collaboration part of this talk. Alongside your training, I'd suggest building a lab. Build a lab to practice in your own environment. You can easily build a virtual lab or a physical lab. It really just depends on what type of training you're looking for. And it doesn't have to be expensive. In fact, you can build virtual labs for free. You can easily create a pen testing environment with VMware Workstation Player, a Windows XP image, and a Kali Linux image. I personally really wanted to understand networking and routing better and wanted a physical lab. So I went out there and bought several Cisco switches, a router, and an access point so that I could really study the Cisco IOS. I also asked for these types of parts for birthdays and other holidays as well to help keep my own costs down. It was good because in a way, it also allowed my family and friends to help invest in my dreams. And it's not a bad idea to ask others to help in this way. It may mean that you don't get the latest gaming console for your birthday, but ultimately it's a direct investment into you. I really wanted to get deep in the command line interface and tinker, and there are some virtual ways to do this as well without needing to buy equipment, but I didn't want some of the limitations. I also really wanted to have a nice cabinet with my IT equipment. The last part hasn't happened yet. And for the longest time, the switches shared my desk, and I would just put my headphones on to drown out the noise of all the fans. Anyway, the point of the lab, to tinker. Here you can build and break, and then build and break again. Build out environments, click all the buttons, try all the options, really learn the ins and outs of the tools you're using. The best learning comes from really needing to figure out why something stopped working after you broke it. So that's what that option does. With a lab, there's endless opportunities to do this without pressure or your job being on the line. If you decide that you don't want to build out a lab, there's plenty of other options. Hack the Box and Hack This Site are examples of sites that give you pen testing challenges for free. Of course, SANS and offensive security come to mind when I think of lab environments that cost money, and they're not cheap, but they have premium training. Other sites are coming along too, and by all means, this is not an exhaustive list of resources, but I do hope to continue gathering information. So feel free to share what you know, and I'll be sure to pass the information on and add it to the website. There's also that lovely conversation regarding education and certifications, or as some would say, education versus certifications. Educations and certifications are important, but they only truly get you so far. And while I'm not speaking for all institutions, from my own experience, I have found that formal education in the form of a university are often years behind the current trends and technologies, and the curriculum may not be as valuable as it could be. Certainly, we have some of the best universities locally, and I would hope that's not the case here. I'm only speaking from my own experience. On the other hand, certifications are only worth as much as you put into them. If you actually study to learn the material and not just pass the test, they often hold the most relevant and useful information regarding the subject. Another option is to take courses that give you certifications once you pass their exams. SANS, for instance, has many courses that they offer, as well as offensive security, EC Council, and many more. There's really a sweet spot in there somewhere between some education and some certifications, and depending on the role you're aiming for, it could actually be a requirement to have both education and certifications, and not so much an option for you. There are a lot of companies that have thrown the college education requirement right out the window. Google, Apple, IBM, and Bank of America are examples. Networking and collaboration is the next big thing. Go to events in the community, join a meetup, go to a conference, talk to people, get on their Slack channel, just don't be annoying. DC 919 meets once a month, majority of the time has a 3 or 4 hour hands-on training session regarding various subjects within security. Raleigh ISSA also meets once a month and has training sessions multiple times a month. RTP, Sec Beers, Oak City Locksport, and 2600 are also good groups for networking. There's also annual conferences in this area. Obviously, the one you're at is one event, but there are others like besides RDU and Triangle InfoSecon. Having people in the community that know you and like you is a pretty big step for finding a job. The security community is really small and we're pretty close-knit. It's not beyond our ability to ask people if they know someone particular or if anyone knows any job openings. When people see you out here volunteering, helping, teaching, speaking on your own free time, it really stands out. It makes a difference, and it's a way to build a circle of allies around you that can help you grow in the direction you want to go. And there's also so many awesome resources out here. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to one of the Slacks and just said out loud, hey, it's Fn00b. You see how I preface this, starting out with admitting that I'm the Fn00b? Does anybody know where the start menu is? Or, hey, it's Fn00b. Anyone around here an expert with Bloodhound? That brings up the next topic of social media. I know some of you are totally against social media, but I'm here to also tell you that it can be used as a tool. Used wisely, you can create your own persona online that emphasizes your passion for security, or even to just say, hey, I was here and I did a security thing. You can also say, hey, here's my documented proof that while I may not have all the experience you're asking for in your job description, I definitely have been actively a part of the security community on my own free time, as you can tell by my social media check that you're going to do when you consider me for this role. Which leads me to the next area. Once you've figured out what you're interested in, studied, built a lab, passed your certification exam, networked with the community, collaborated, and have a social media presence, it's time to consider applying for a job or a new one. While considering roles, I'd like to also mention that the culture of the employer also really matters, and I recommend researching it. Are they focused on training? Do they offer training vouchers? Do they reimburse you for training? Do they allow you to work from home? How big is the team? Can you bring your dog to work? I can, and it's awesome. You have to figure out what environment works best for you and what you value. Also think about whether you are interested in learning more than just your main role, or if you would prefer to work in a position that has just a couple main responsibilities. Some people work better in siloed type environments, while others are more eager to learn and to expand into as many areas as possible. I didn't start with a security engineer title from the get-go. Remember, I started with no formal training in IT whatsoever, just the passion I had inside of me from the first time I ever laid eyes on a motherboard. In the last 8 years, I've worked on the help desk, built a help desk, ran the print server, learned the ins and outs of Active Directory, Office 365, learned how to run scripts, use PowerShell, implemented hardening procedures, pushed for tougher security in my own environments, and worked alongside every security team that I could. Security has always been a big part of my role, no matter what my title was, and that's important to remember and also to mention on your resume. I used to live in Goldsboro, which is about an hour and a half from here, and I drove out here regularly to attend meetups, conferences, and sometimes multiple times a week. I've attended almost every local and regional security conference from Georgia to Washington, D.C. in the last few years and have volunteered at several of them. So here's a quick shout out as well to all the people in all the different communities that create and manage these events and all the other volunteers that help make them run. Eventually, I found a way to a company that would consider me for a security role after I finished the big project they hired me for. I knew what I wanted prior to taking the role, so when they got around to considering people for the security engineer role, I pestered them because I knew what I wanted and I felt I had paid my dues. I'd also like to mention, too, that STEM is important in our communities and schools. As a kid, I was curious. I think we all were. I remember the first time my father brought home this weird boxy machine that had letters and a really small green screen. I asked him what it was, and he said it was a laptop. What's a laptop? How does it work? In second grade, they took us to the library on a field trip, and I remember that day because it changed my life. The library was having a computer day event. On the tables, they had open computers with motherboards on display, and I shit you not, I thought this was so awesome. I looked at those motherboards and my curiously imaginative brain started going down an adventure that has just not stopped, even to this very day. To 6-year-old me, the transistors and resistors were like little buildings, and the traces were the roads. The fan was a stadium. This was the coolest micro machine city ever. I wanted to know how it worked. I wanted to know why it worked. I asked a million questions, and I still do. So here I am. My passion for IT was embedded into me right then and there, 6 years old. Some of the best ways to learn is really to teach, and children will ask a million questions because they are so curious, and curiosity is perfect for this field. Finally, if there's anything I've learned in the 8 years of working in IT, it's this. Technology moves quickly. Keep learning to stay relevant. Office politics play a big role in decisions, so don't take them personally. And no, they have not tried to turn it off and then on again. On the more personal topic about being a woman in IT, there's a few things that I'd like to say. Sit at the table because your presence matters. Speak up because your ideas are valuable. Don't take any shit from anyone because you're deserving of respect. And if you have to take their shit, only do so strategically and then go to HR. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you're gonna spend more time with your coworkers than your own family, and you deserve a happy life. So draw a line and don't take that shit. If HR does nothing, find somewhere else to work because the company has issues fundamentally and you are not a pawn. Recognize your allies. There are wonderful men and women both in and outside of IT that will be inspired by your persistent nature to continue pushing forward and will always be in your corner. You are not alone. A whole army of women within IT and security have their own crazy experiences, and there's several groups like Women in Security and Privacy to prove that. And lastly, on the subject of being a woman in security, I really, really want to wait in line at local and regional security conferences to use the women's bathroom. It would truly make me happy to see more women involved. And while the bathroom visits are streamlined currently, I have big hopes that we can get more women involved and that we, too, eventually will have to wait in lines. Alongside my talk tonight, we have launched my website, fnoob.com. That is Fn00b.com. As I stated earlier, the website is in its infancy, but the goal is to build it out to be a major resource and place for noobs and professionals alike. I'm also on Twitter at fnoob, so tweet me. I know I mentioned earlier the whole social media persona thing. I'm still working on that too, so tweeting me will help. And my email is fnoob@fnoob.com, of course. Please feel free to reach out. Being a noob is the best part of this profession because it means that I'm continuously pushing myself to new heights, curiously pursuing new adventures, and fully living my own dream. For those out there that have anxiety about being a noob, I'm here to ask you to pat yourself on the back because ultimately it means that you are trying something new, and in order to grow, you have to expand beyond your own knowledge. You aren't alone. There's a whole wonderful and awesome community here to help support you with your goals and dreams, regardless of whether you're a seasoned veteran or completely new to the wonderful world of hacking and security. So welcome, noobs.